Welcome to the first session of Advanced Got Farm Records Now What, a workshop to teach value-added producers how to create and use spreadsheets to evaluate their records. There'll be 3 sessions for the workshop, and in this session we will discuss some basic concepts like starting and moving around in Excel, entering formulas, and saving the work. Please note that we are recording this session. Our instructor, Lamar Smith, will be our presenter, and we look forward to this hands-on approach to learning about Excel. Thank you, Lamar, for your efforts in developing the handout and the files with worksheets for use in the class, and we look forward to learning about how to utilize the power of Excel in analyzing our farm records.
All right, well, thanks, Hal. I work like this every day. Sometimes video on, sometimes video off. I'm very comfortable, you know, in this type of an environment. What I want y'all to be is comfortable, and most importantly, interrupt me. If I'm explaining something and I get through my explanation of it and it's just not clicking, okay, that's my fault. I didn't explain it very well, apparently. I want you to tell me that and ask me to, would you go over that again? Or I didn't follow when you said, and that is great by me. I enjoy people interacting and working together, and I enjoy using Excel. That, you know, I got an accounting degree, so and I work for an IT company, so I guess I'm pretty nerdy in that regard. So I get excited about learning new things about Excel and like sharing it with people as well. Kind of the beginning of in accounting terms, how things get started like this. This is an old-fashioned columnar pad. You may have used one like this before. It's got columns that go across with rows, and you can record figures. And I think that's where Excel got its start, is the idea of what we used to do on paper. What can we do and automate it? Let it do the math for us. We don't have to add it up, and you have a great many more columns and a great many more rows than you could have on a physical piece of paper. And so it becomes a very powerful tool for analyzing data that you've collected in other ways. Excel's not, it doesn't create data, it analyzes data based on the way that you've put it together. Tonight we're just going to kind of go over navigating, how to get around in Excel, what some of the terminology is, and it's just a foundation of things that we'll build on as we get into this more advanced things later in the course. Hal already mentioned this, but I'll reiterate it. I really encourage you, if Excel is something that you've rarely used, you're not very comfortable with it, use the things that we're going to talk about tonight over the next week until we meet again. You know, just try your hand at some of the things that we'll talk about, and kind of anchor those concepts in your mind so that when we get together next Thursday night, they'll still be familiar to you. All right. My main monitor is right here. So hopefully I'm looking at my main monitor. I'm kind of looking at you, and I'm going to move this Zoom meeting over here to my laptop monitor. So that's why it looks a little strange sometimes when I'm not looking towards the camera. And I'm going to share my monitor that's got Excel on it. So Hal, just to make sure you're seeing that, right?
Yes, I am seeing your worksheet.
Okay, great. And we also have the chat session going. Hal's going to monitor that chat session. And so if some thought crosses your mind and you just want to make a note of it, you know, Hal, it may not be exactly on topic to what we're talking about at the moment, but it's something about Excel and you want to make a note of it so that we can think about that for question and answer times later on. That'd be great too. But please interrupt me if what I'm talking about isn't clear. I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of this. I'm on page 1 of the handout, and tonight we're going to do our best to get through page 9. But if we need to pick up next week, wherever we leave off is what we'll do. There's a lot of tools. If you just look at Excel, you'll see there's here on the home page, there's all of these buttons that do different things in this tool ribbon, and then there's other menus under insert and draw and page layout and formulas, and it can look overwhelming. And that's why we want to start with just doing some navigating. Your Excel may not look exactly like mine. I'm using version that's associated with Office 365, and that's why mine says Home, Insert, Draw. If you have one of the other versions, you may have a slightly different layout, but most of the tools are still there. This ribbon can also be collapsed, and if this arrow, up arrow, over in the far right hand side bottom edge of the ribbon, if you click on that, it collapses that ribbon. I generally work with the ribbon showing like this, and I find that it's helpful to me to have these buttons available. What you'll notice right off the bat is a lot of rectangles. All these little rectangles that make up the lower portion of the screen underneath the ribbon. Those rectangles are called cells. Like you think of a single cell organism, it's a cell. So we can move around by taking my mouse and I just left click and I'm in a different cell. And then the cells are in columns that have letters, and they are in rows that have numbers. So, you know, when you were a kid, you may have played a game called Battleship. It was one of my favorites, and you could say, you know, H6, and everybody knew you were talking about this location, and it's the same thing with Excel. Cells have addresses, and it's the letter number combination that makes that address. If you notice up here in the right below the ribbon, on the far left hand side, you'll see a little box and it says H6. This is the address box. It's telling us where we are in the spreadsheet. This can be used a number of different ways. We can actually navigate with it by typing J3, and now the cell that we're looking at is J3. You can also use your arrow keys. I'm not using my mouse. I'm using my left arrow and I'm moving horizontally across the page. Down arrow, up arrow, right arrow. All of those ways of navigating are available to you. One of the things you'll find about Excel is there's more than one way to do most everything you want to do. And so there's no wrong way of doing it as long as you're accomplishing what you're trying to achieve. And so if you like using the mouse and you just want to click where you want the cell that you're working in to be, or if you want to use the arrow keys, here's another way. You can hold the control key down and touch the letter G for go, and you'll get a go-to box. And in the go-to box, you can type, I'll be very extreme here, AA 2000. And I am now in column AA, row 2000. So you can really move around if you know your letters and numbers. Columns, by the way, once you get to Z, you go to AA, AB, AC, and on and on. The control key plus the home key will take you all the way to the top left, and the control end key will take you to the bottom right hand edge of any data that you have in the spreadsheet. It won't take you to the very bottom right hand corner because that's a very long way away. It takes you just to the bottom of the data that you have in the spreadsheet. Cells can hold a lot of different types of information. Um, Excel is generally thought of as being for numbers, but it can hold text, it can hold dates, um, you can put formulas, lots of different things can go in the cells, and we'll work through some of those as we go through this workshop. Any questions so far? That's all pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but I will pause just to make sure. All right, so you can type, excuse me, I'm sorry, my pages are out of order and I need to move. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm back with you. The cell that has the boulder wall around it, wherever you click, it's got a boulder wall around it. In my case, because of the formatting of my machine, Excel has a green bar at the top, and this border around the cell is also green. Your machine could be different if you've chosen a different layout of your office products. This cell is called the active cell. And so anytime we say, well, go to your active cell, or you need to make that cell active, we're saying put that border around it. And you do that by the navigation tools that we talked about already. So this is, I'm on a tab at the bottom that's got the name formulas. And there's another tab that's called operation order and another tab called functions. We'll use these as we work through the workshop. Because this file has multiple tabs, this is called a workbook. Each tab is called a worksheet. So this is like a sheet of paper, and then you can have another sheet of paper is on another tab. And you can change by simply left clicking on the tabs that are in front of you there at the bottom. You can add tabs with the plus sign at the far right. The formula bar is the bar just to the right of this name box that we talked about, where the cell's name is located. The formula bar is here. It's a long strip, and you can type your information there. You can type directly in the cell by clicking in the cell and then putting information in. You'll notice it appears in the cell and it appears in the formula bar at the same time. You can just hit enter and it's accepted and it's now in that cell. You can also do the checkbox and that's now in that cell. So what I'm interested in doing is to start by starting in A1. If everybody just wants to kind of follow along here, we're gonna put a number in A1, just whatever number that you're interested in doing. And when I hit enter, Excel moved to A2. And it does that because generally it thinks that you're going to put numbers in a column, top to bottom, not left to right. So another way of doing that would have been, I could have put the number in and hit the right key, the right arrow key. I could have also put the number in and hit the tab, and I would have moved to the right. And those are different ways that you can confirm the value that you put in the cell that you want it to be in that cell. And then to delete that information, you just use your delete key and it will remove it. It doesn't take the cell away. We'll talk about that later on, but it removes the value from that cell. If you delete something and you went, oh man, that is not what I meant to do, your saving grace is a arrow at the very top that looks like a U-turn kind of hooking back over to the left, and that is the undo. you can click that and it'll put it right back. You can also do an undo by doing a Control Z. Control Z is the undo shortcut. You can also undo and then undo what you just did. And that's the arrow that it hooks over back to the right. So you can change your mind back and forth a couple of times if you're not sure about what you're trying to accomplish. Another thing that sometimes we find when we're putting information into cells is that the information doesn't fit. So I put Hal's name into the cell and it's just a little bit too long. And that will look strange when I put information in the cell next to it. It truncates that information off and it's not visible. So the way you can correct the cell not being wide enough is, if you'll notice, by hovering right where the two columns come together, my cursor will change. Excel uses the cursor to tell you about the tool that you're trying to use. And when you get that vertical bar with a left and right arrow coming from it, I can now left click and hold. I'm holding that mouse left button down, and I'm going to drag it to the right, and I can make this as wide as I want it to be. And when I let go, I have the column at the width that I need. Now there's another thing you can do. I've got that column too short. If you had a spreadsheet that had maybe 5,000 rows in it, and some of those rows were not showing all the data because the column, well, instead of having to scroll all the way down through all 5,000 rows to see, well, which one's the longest, if you just hover over that the right edge of your column of interest and get that cursor that's the vertical bar with the left and right arrow, and then double click with the left key, just double click. Excel will consider all of the rows and find the largest value, and it will make the column the necessary width required just by double clicking with the vertical bar at the column at the top. You can clear the entire row of data by selecting it. You notice my cursor changes to a down black arrow. When it's the down black arrow, I can select that whole column. When the cursor changes to a right black arrow, I can select the whole row. And so by selecting the whole column and hitting the delete key, I clear everything that's in that column from the top of the sheet to the bottom of the sheet. You do the same thing with rows. Highlight the row, and touch the delete key on your keyboard, and the row is cleared. Any questions so far?
So if I could just ask, there's one person that's connected by phone, and the phone number is 901-626-0376. Could you tell us who you are so I can make a note of your attendance? Okay. Well, we'll keep going, Lamar. Sorry to interrupt.
It's all right. They're muted, Hal, so they may not be able to tell you.
Well, let me try. Let's see if I can unmute them. And
This is Cleophas and Dolly Montgomery, Somerville, Tennessee.
Hi, what was that?
M Farm.
What was the name again?
M Farm, Cleophas and Dolly Montgomery, Somerville, Tennessee.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Lamar, we'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I don't know if any of you ever thought that you might want to be a computer programmer or not, but I'm about to make you one. In the formulas tab, the formulas worksheet, so if you've clicked around in the workbook, you may want to click back on the formulas tab, and in cells A1 through A4, what I'm interested in having you do is just put some numbers in. They don't have to be big numbers. I'm going to put a few in here, and then I'm going to go to B1, and I'm putting a few numbers. Just random numbers. So we'll work with these as by way of illustration. So in E1, what we're going to do is we're going to start by typing, I've made E1 the active cell by clicking on it, and I'm going to type the equal sign. The reason why I type an equal sign is the equal sign is the signal to Excel that I want Excel to do something for me. Whenever the contents of a cell starts with an equal sign, Excel sees that as, okay, here comes some instructions. Now the instruction that I want to give it for this little simple thing is I just want to give it the cell address of A1. So I'm going to type A1. And you'll notice that A1 is now highlighted with blue, and the A1 text in the cell is also blue. Corresponds, they match up. And I hit the enter key, and now E1 contains the value that's in A1. So now if I change A1, make it a 7, E1 updates automatically. So by just typing equal A1, I have told Excel that I want the cell E1 to also present that same data. That's the most simple formula that you can put into Excel. And if you've achieved that, well, you're now a computer programmer. Anybody have any trouble with that? All right, let's do some arithmetic. Just the basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Excel can do all of those things. They're the building blocks of everything that you'll do in Excel is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So what we'll do is we'll add row 1, we'll subtract row 2, multiply row 3, and divide row 4. So starting in cell C1, we're going to do a formula that's going to add A1 and B1. So to start, I have to start with the equal sign. Normally, when we were taught in school, we were taught you'd write a math problem like 1 plus 2 equals. Well, if you do that, Excel will not see that as a task that it needs to do. It will just simply put that in the cell as 1 plus 2 equals as that text. So you have to kind of write it backwards. So equals, and I want it to be A1, and I'm just typing A1. I'm going to enter the plus key, and I'm going to type B1. And you'll notice B1 is red, A1 is blue, and now I hit enter, and it tells me it's 9. And likewise, if I change either one of those, then it updates that math automatically for me. So now we'll do the subtraction. It's just the same way, except I'm going to enter it a little differently. I'm going to start with the equal sign, and I'm going to use my mouse, and I'm going to click on A2, and on my keyboard, I'll enter a minus sign, and I'll click on B2, and it works exactly the same. I hit the enter key, and it's done the math for me. 10 minus 3 is 7. If I change this, it automatically updates it. Multiplication uses a symbol that's a little odd. Most of us in elementary school learn to use an X for multiplication, but we use an asterisk in Excel for multiplication. The asterisk can be found if you have a full-size keyboard like I do. Above the 9 on the number pad, there's an asterisk key, and on a regular keyboard, there's a number row above the letters, and on the 8, you have to hold shift, but on the 8, you'll get an asterisk. So let's do multiplication. I start with the equal sign, clicked on A3, typed an asterisk, clicked on B3, and it did the math for me, 105. And the division, very similarly, but this time we'll use a slant. It's a forward slant. You start with the equal. I'll click on A4. You can find the slant on the full-size keyboard above the 8 on the number pad, above the 8 on the number pad, or on your regular keyboard. Usually that forward slant will be found next to the underneath the question mark. You'll have an enter key and then a shift key below that. Just to the left of that shift key is a question mark with a forward slant. Forward slant, the top right is leaning, it's leaning to the top right is the way you know that it's a forward slant. The back slant, it's leaning back. It's leaning to the top left, and that's not what we want. So the forward slant is the division, B4, and I got all my answers here. Was everybody able to get through that? It's pretty straightforward. Be sure to ask if you're not getting your Excel to work the way you want it to.
Kind of critical that we get these operations down so that we know what we're doing. So if you're having any question about that, please go ahead and speak up and let us know.
Yeah, these are the building blocks that everything will start to work under. All right, we're going to move over, and I'm on page 5. The section called Order of Operation, and you'll notice that there's a tab on your spreadsheet that we sent to you. The tab is Operation Order, and I've already pre-populated some information in here. And this is audience participation here on this. I got a question. It's pretty simple. But if we had an event going on and it was a $20 fee for that event, and there was a group of people over here, and out of that group of people, 3 people wanted to go to this event, and then we came to a second group of people. There were 7 people out of the second group that wanted to go to the event. The fee's $20. How much money should we have collected for these 2 groups of people to attend this event? That shouldn't task you too bad.
So Lamar is really looking for audience participation. So either unmute. There you go.
Did I hear? Did you have the answer?
200?
That's right. It would be $200. So I'm going to enter in the formula just like you think you might. You start with the equal sign and you say 3 plus 7 times the $20 fee, and Excel tells me it's $143. The reason why Excel does not calculate this right is because it doesn't understand the question. In math, we have order of operation. Math and division are done first. Addition and subtraction are done last. And so what Excel's doing is it's multiplying 7 times 20, and it's getting 140. And then it's adding 3 to that. So I get 143. So there's times that we have to tell Excel what we mean. What did we intend? And what we intend is the logical thing is I've got 3 people over here and 7 people over here, and that's 10 people total, and those 10 people each pay $20. Well, that's $200. So how do we get Excel to do that? Well, we force with parentheses, and that's also part of mathematical operation is parentheses will override, and it will be done first. So there's 2 ways to edit this formula. One way is just to click up here in the formula bar where I want to edit. And you'll notice that my cursor turns into an I cursor. It's plus down here. It's a pointer up here on the ribbon. But when I'm on the formula bar, it's an I cursor. So what I want to do is I want to click just before the A, and I'm going to put an open parenthesis. I'll click just after the B2, put a close parenthesis. So this is going to force Excel to add those 2 values together first, then multiply by the value. And as I mentioned earlier, I can click this check box, or I can hit enter to get this to be accepted. Now it changes it to 200. So now my formula is working right. So if my group number changes, I can quickly find out, well, now how much money is required for the entry fee for the event. Another way to edit this, and not all keyboards have function keys anymore. Function keys are kind of getting to be old-fashioned kind of technology. And a lot of laptops don't have function keys, or they're hard to get to. You have to sometimes hold a function button down and then use another button to get a function key. But F2 on a full-size keyboard will open the cell, the active cell. It'll open it into an editing mode. And so you'll notice that, let me hit escape. When I hit F2, the cell opens up, and I can navigate within that cell, and I could have made the changes that way as well. So any questions about order of operation or editing? All right. We're going to go back over to the formulas tab, and we're in the formulas workbook. And I'm going to highlight column C, and I'm going to hit the delete key. And we're going to work a little differently, go into a little bit more complex task, slightly more complex. If I had a very long spreadsheet, 2 columns of numbers, and I want to add those 2 columns together row by row by row, well, I would have to do what we did earlier. I'd have to equal A1 plus B1, enter. And then I would have to go to C2, and I'd have to equal A2 plus B2, enter. And that would get to be a pretty awesome, not awesome, but a horrible task. If I had to do that for a spreadsheet that had like 5,000 rows in it, I would just be hours and hours trying to keep that all in. Well, fortunately, there's many ways to copy that formula down, and I'm going to show you several here. We're not going to work with a 5,000 row spreadsheet. We'll just work with the 4 rows here, and you'll be able to see how it works. One way to do it would be to actually copy it. And there's a copy button right here. You can click on that copy button. You can right click on the active cell and you can click on the word copy. So I'm going to do that now. I'm clicking on copy. You'll notice that there's now a flashing dash line. A lot of people call this marching ants. And so I know because of those marching ants that that cell is copied to my clipboard, and I can paste that formula in other places. So now I can click in C2 and I can right click, and the very first paste icon right here is the paste key, and I hit that, and so now I have A2 plus B2 in the second row. And you notice that the row indexed, I copied A1 plus B1, but when I pasted that formula into the second row, it indexed that value to the appropriate formula for that row. That's called relative cell reference. Relative cell reference says that when I copy and paste, it will update the formula according to how I moved from the source to the destination. Another way I can copy this is to hold the control key down, and I know y'all can't see me doing that, but I'm holding the control key down, and I'm going to touch the letter C, as in Charlie. And now I'm going to, with my mouse, I'm going to highlight the 3 rows that I want the formula to be pasted into, and now I'm going to do a Control V. And it has put that formula in, and relative cell reference has updated the formula A3 plus B3 and A4 plus B4. So that's another way that I can copy paste. I can copy paste using the menus the same way by highlighting the rows that I want to be my destination, right click and hit that first icon. It'll do it like that too. I'll give you a third way. A third way to copy this formula down the page for all the rows that need it is to drag the cell down. You'll notice on the bottom right-hand corner of the active cell, there is a handle. It's a little small square. If you look at my mouse, it's a white plus at the moment, but when I get over that white square, it turns into a black plus. The black plus is the one that tells me I'm where I need to be. Don't be confused by what I'm showing you right now. That's the mouse pointer with a north, south, east, and west arrows. That's not the black plus. That's for something else, and I'll show you what that is for in a moment. The black plus looks like that right there. Now, having that showing, I'm going to left click and hold it, and I'm going to drag it down and let go, and it copied my formulas down. I'm going to show you a fourth way. This is my favorite way. Remember, we're imagining what it would be like to have a worksheet that's got 5,000 rows in it that I want to put this formula in. Well, I don't have to drag it all the way down 5,000 rows. If I get on that handle with the black plus and I do a left double click, like I'm going to do right now, Excel will copy that formula down for as many rows as there is data. So if there was a break in the data at row 2000, but I want it to be all the way down to 5,000, and I did that double click trick, Excel would stop at row 2000, and I would have to manually jump that gap. Once I jumped that gap, then I could do it again, and it would copy it all the way down. So as long as there's continuous data in the columns of interest, Excel will copy the formula down. Any questions so far about this? All right. So far we've been working with very simple formulas, and I'm going to illustrate a little bit more complex formula by adding 4 numbers instead of just 2 numbers. And remember, these principles apply if it was a spreadsheet that was thousands of rows or columns. It would be rather tedious if I had to do this. If I wanted to add up all of the numbers in this column, maybe 2,000 rows, if I had to do it like this, equals A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus A4. Now Excel will do it. That's the answer. But if I had to do that for 2,000 rows, again, too much work. So Excel gives us a button when we want to add up a row of numbers, because that's a very common financial need. I just need to know what the total number is for this value. Over here on our ribbon, towards the right-hand side, you'll see a sigma sign. It looks like an M laying on its side, and it says auto sum. When you have the active cell below the number and you click auto sum, Excel puts the formula in for you. The formula is a function called sum, equals sum, and then it uses shortcut for listing all of the values of interest. So that could be A1 colon A2000, and it would add up all those numbers for us. Earlier, we talked about how to copy a formula over. And so if I want to copy this formula over to the B column, I grab the handle and move it to the right, and it copied B1 to B4. Relative cell reference didn't index the numbers, it indexed the columns because the motion of my drag was to the right. So it knew to index the columns, not index the numbers.
Would you go over that once more, Lamar?
Yeah. So I want my sum formula to be in column B here in B5. And so I'm grabbing this handle and I'm dragging it over, and it put the formula sum B1 colon B4. I'll explain the way the function works more in a minute, but it indexed it from A1 to A4 to B1 to B4, right? So it indexed the columns because I drug the formula, copied the formula horizontally. And so it knew it needed to index the column number, letters. Earlier when I did it vertically, it knew it needed to index the row numbers. Make sense?
Yep, very good.
All right, so I want to go now to the functions tab of our handout. And in the functions worksheet, I've already got some information populated. It's fictitious. We made these numbers up. We didn't make the county names up, but we made the numbers up. And it's just by way of illustration of how we can put to work some of the things that we've been talking about. So in the functions worksheet, what I want to do, I've got a task. My task is I need to know, based on the data that's been collected for each county over the 4 years that I have data, what were the total number of acres used in vegetable production cumulatively? What was the total for all of the counties year by year, what was the average, and what were the percentages of the acreage year to year to year. So I've got all this data. How do I get what I need? Well, one of the things we know we need is we need to total for the year 2017, the total acres used for vegetable production. And I know that there's a lot more counties in Tennessee than just the 11 that we have listed here. But my spreadsheet would get really long and I'd have to scroll up and down for y'all to see what I was doing. So we limited it to just a few for an illustration. So we learned earlier that this sum button will allow me to get this total. But sometimes Excel doesn't understand what I'm asking, and I'll show you what will happen here. So I'm in B15, the total cell for year 2017, and I hit auto sum, and it throws this marching ants around too much. It doesn't understand, Excel doesn't understand that the year 2017 isn't included in my data. It's a label header, not vegetable acres used in production. So I can change that manually. I can click in the cell here. I can click in the formula bar up here, and I can change that manually by deleting the 2 and making it a 3. And now my highlighted area is correct at the top. It's okay at the bottom, but to make it nice and neat, I left this row at the bottom to be blank just so that the worksheet would have a pleasant appearance to it. So I really should stop it at row 13. So the same thing, I can delete the 4, add a 3, hit enter, and now I've got my total. 1573 was the total number of acres for the year 2017. Now you notice that there is a little error symbol here. It's got a yellow caution sign like you'd see a road sign with an exclamation point in it. Excel, and that's what that green little flag is over here too. Excel is telling me that I don't understand what you just did. Excel thought that I should get all these other rows, and I didn't do that. And so it's telling me that there's numbers that are adjacent and I missed them. If I know that I did it the right way, I can tell Excel to ignore this, but this is an opportunity for me to review what I did and make sure I did it right. So I'm going to use this drop down arrow and I'm going to say ignore this arrow, and all that goes away. Let me show you another way to do what we just did. I deleted the formula from the cell. In B15, I'm going to hit the auto sum button. It throws the marching ants around an area that's larger than what I really want. And I'm just going to take the mouse and I'm going to left click at the beginning of the the beginning of the values that are correct. I'm just going to drag it down to the end of the values that I want. I'm going to let go of the mouse key and hit enter or click this check box, and I get the formula the same way I did earlier. You'll notice that it puts a colon in between the first cell and the last cell. That's what, to Excel, what the colon means is like the word to. I would read that to say, I want to sum B3 to B13. So the colon is like the word to, from A to Z. Any questions about this function and how we're using it so far? Well, earlier we learned that I can just drag this across and I'll get my totals for all the years. And so I'm doing that now. I'm just dragging that formula across, and there's all my totals for all the years. So another thing that I want is I want the totals for each county. So I put the active cell in my total column for the first row, hit the auto sum, and this time Excel accurately understands the values that I'm trying to add up. So I just hit enter, and I get my total, grab the handle, and I pull it down as far as I need to go. And there's all my totals for each county. You know, I didn't total the grand total that would be in F15. What's the total for all the counties for all the years? Well, I needed the values either horizontally or vertically before I could. Now that I got it, I can just grab this last one and bring it over one more, and now I get the grand total, 6,805. Excel has a lot of different functions that you can use. And by the time we get to the third class in this series, we're going to be using quite a few different functions. We'll talk about how to find other functions. In 3 workshops of an hour and a half each, we could never exhaust all the different functions that are available in Excel. But we'll talk about how to find them later on. There is an average function. So we're going to demonstrate how to use that average function. We know how to average. We learned that in elementary school. You sum all the values and then divide by how many values did you have in the information. So I could do it manually. I could do a sum of these 4 right here, which is that number right there. And then I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put in a /4, and it would give me the average. But Excel can do all that for you with the average function. Ironically, the average function name is average. So you just start with an equal sign and you type the word average, and you'll notice you see all these different functions that are starting to pop up. Excel Help will guide you through the functions, the choices of functions if you can get close. Sometimes I can't remember exactly how they worded a function, but just by starting it, I will get what I'm looking for. And when I find it, I can click on it, and it will give me a little definition. Here's the definition. Returns the average or the arithmetic mean of its arguments, which can be numbers or names, arrays, or references that contain numbers. So this is what I want. I want an average because I'm trying to find the mean. So I double click it, and it completes that average function name and starts with the open parenthesis, and it's telling me in the help that now I need to know where are all the numbers that you want me to average. So I could highlight across like this, hit enter, and I get the average. I could also type it out, average, open parenthesis. I know I want B3 colon to E3 colon, and hit enter, and I get the average 39.25. And now by now, everybody knows how to get this average all the way down as we drag this handle down or double click it. Oh, I did this the other night, Hal, and I forgot. I need to look as to why the double click's not working on this. But I want to drag it down. And so here's my average acres for each county. I can do an average over here for each year. And so I would just simply start with my equal sign, average, open parenthesis, to begin to populate the cells of interest for this function, close parenthesis, and here's my average for 2017. I'll drag this across. and I've got my values. Any questions? Okay. One more complexity that we need to know about when we're doing certain calculations, and we'll demonstrate that with a percentage calculation. So I'm not looking for an Excel function. I'm looking for the math. How do we calculate a percentage mathematically? I've got the years, each year represented. And if I wanted to know what this year 2017, what percentage is the year 2017 out of the total number of acres for the 4 years in question? I would need to divide this, right? I would need to say equals the total for the year 2017 and do the division symbol and total acreage over the 4 years. And when I hit enter, I get the percentage 23.12%. Now, all night long, I have been telling y'all how smart Excel is, and all you got to do now is drag this formula over, but I'm going to show you where Excel is going to let you down. So I'm going to drag this over, and I get division errors, divide by 0 errors. So when we click in the cell and we look up here at the formula bar, we see what Excel tried to do. It said relative cell reference, when I moved horizontally, I should index all the column values. So I'm dividing the value found in C15, which is right here. Well, that's right. I do. I want the year 2018, and I want it to be divided by, oh, G15. It's trying to divide by this empty cell, right? Because relative cell reference moved my formula to the right in the column, so it indexed all the columns. Does that make sense what went wrong? Now let me show you how to fix it. If you know that you have a cell in your formula that's not going to move left, right, up, down, right, you want to lock it in your formula. I do not want Excel to use relative cell reference to advance this value in my formula. You lock that with a $sign. So it's F, that column, F is the column that I do not want to move in my formula. So I'm going to go into the formula. I clicked into the formula bar in front of the F, and I'm putting a $sign. What the $sign means in a formula is it means lock that value in the formula. Now I hit the check mark. Didn't change the answer. All it did was lock the cell. But now when I copy this cell over, I get the percentages, and you'll notice F15 is in every formula. And that's because it was locked by that $sign. And I'm in column E, the E15, that's correct. D15, that's correct. C15, yep, that's correct. So I was able to use a $sign to lock the cell, to force Excel to use absolute cell value, not relative cell value. Questions about that? So we're going to leave this worksheet, and let's go back over to the formulas worksheet. And I want to touch on another aspect of copy and paste that could be a benefit to you. to make my illustration, I'm going to put a formula in here, just something simple. I'm going to start with equals A1 times B1, and I'm going to copy this down. So there might be a time, and I'll give you an illustration of a time when I needed it. Back when I was a business owner, we had price lists that we would distribute to potential customers. We say, here's our price list, and they could look at the products and decide what they wanted to buy. Often we would calculate those price lists using Excel spreadsheets. We would take the wholesale cost and use formulas to arrive at what our retail price would be based on what we wanted our gross profit to be. Well, that's information that I did not want to share with my client. All I wanted them to see was the retail price. So to do that, we would do the calculations, but then we would replace the formulas that were in the cells with the value of the formula that the formula produced. So whatever the answer is what I want to be in the cell. So let me demonstrate that. Here in C, column C, I've got these simple formulas. I'm going to highlight all of them, and I'm going to do a Control C like I normally would. That's the copy, and that puts the marching ants around it. I'm going to go over here to A1, and I'm going to right click, and you'll notice that there's a paste special choice. Paste special will give me other choices, and I want values. This is the choice for put the answer here, not the formula. And when I say okay, well, you see that they match, but when you consider what's in the cell in column C, what's in the cell is a formula. But in column E, what's in the cell is the answer to a formula from somewhere else. The value is there. That will not update when I type in A or B. That's just a value now. So paste special will for values will paste the answer into a location where you want it. Let me show you another way to do that. I'm doing a Control C, and I come over here to E, and then when I right click, you'll notice that there's a icon that's got a clipboard and 1, 2, 3 written under it. And if I can get my mouse just in the right spot, you can see the help is populating underneath it with values. So it's giving you the option just to paste the values. Questions? All right. The last thing that I've got on my list is how to save a workbook. You've done all this work. You don't want to lose it. And the way you save it, you can just hit this save diskette. It's kind of funny. We don't use diskettes anymore, do we? But the icon is a diskette. You can go to File, and you can choose Save. And either of those choices, what you're going to do is you're going to overwrite the file that we sent you, and that's fine if you want to do that. You can also use Save As, where Save As will give you an opportunity to save the file to a new name. Sometimes I like to keep the original file. I make modifications to it, and maybe I want to send it to a coworker and have them review it with my modifications. And so you can navigate to a location where you want to store it. I'm just going to change this name. I want to add Thursday to this file, and I'm going to hit save. And so now I have saved this to a new location with a new name, and my original worksheet is still exactly like it was when we started. So Hal, we have about 10 minutes left, and we've gone through the material, so maybe we didn't have as many questions this week, this night, as we did last time, but I'm not eager to rush off. If there was anybody had any questions that came up during the discussion tonight, I'll be happy to address them, go over something again.
Okay, so I see a message in the chat box that said, can you repeat that? And unfortunately, I just discovered that message, so I'm not sure, Cynthia, what you needed help repeating. Would you like to either unmute your mic or type in the chat box a little more specific? Was it the very last thing that we went over or something
And
else?
I am happy to repeat it.
Hey, Hal. This is
Hey.
Cynthia.
Hey, Cynthia.
Hey. Just that last one where he pasted special. Right then, something happened with my cursor, so I was with him, and then I looked over, and the numbers had changed.
Yeah.
Okay, happy to.
Okay.
So in column C, I've got some formulas. So I'm multiplying the numbers in A to the number in B for each row. So this is active. I can, if I change anything here, I'm going to get an updated calculation. But there's times that you may not want to reveal your formula. All you want someone else to see is the answer that the formula produced. And then when that's the case, you can copy these answers by doing any copy that you care to do. You can hit copy here. You can right click and hit copy here. I'm going to do a Control C, and then I'm going to come over to column E, wherever you want to put these answers, right click, paste special, and in this dialog box, there's a choice called values. So it's not going to paste the formula, it's going to paste the answer, the value that was calculated. So when I hit OK, you'll see that those columns match, but column E is not going to update. If I change these numbers in A or B, well, these numbers are updating, but these numbers are not changing. And that's because you can look in the formula bar and you can see that that's a 20 that's in E1. It's an 18 that's in E2. It's not a formula like we see in C1 or C2 or C3. Does that help?
Yes. Yeah, I see it. I get you. You're just
Okay.
you're just moving the values, but you're not copying the formulas over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I may not want the other person to know my formulas.
Yeah.
I want them to know the answer, not how I got there. Because
Right.
that may be information that's only for you to see, like your cost or how much you're marking it up, or any number of things.
Okay. Got it.
Any other questions?
Did you want us to change the name of our worksheet at this point, our workbook, or just leave it the way it is?
You can leave it the way it is. I was just demonstrating how to do a save as.
Okay, got it. I gotcha.
Just because it's valuable in my line of work. We often will do updates to spreadsheets, and I will save as and put my initials in the name. I may put today's date, and then I send it to someone else, and then they have to do further work to it, and they want to make sure that they're working in the copy that came from me on the day, the date that I did the work.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? I'm happy to. I like talking about Excel, so it's no burden for me at all to to talk about Excel.
Where would we be able to, or how would we be able to save our formulas, or should we like copy it over, or because I don't want to send my price list out to somewhere and my competitors get a hold of how I'm marking my stuff up because it's not their business. So like
Let me see if
how would I how would I be able to save the formulas and send out my values? Or would I have to
I,
copy the whole
yeah,
thing?
I understand your question. When we get into, I'm gonna show you, and I'm only concerned that I'm gonna overwhelm you. And as we go through the workshop, I think some of this um, will make a little bit more sense. But let me show you the answer. So I'm gonna use this new spreadsheet that I just opened. I did File, New, and I did a new blank workbook. That's how I got here. And so I'm gonna put some formulas in here because these are my costs, and I want to take my cost and I want to divide it by 0.6 for say, and so now I got a selling price, and I'm not doing any kind of formatting to make this look pretty. I'm just getting the raw numbers here. All right, so I've got a cost of $2, $3, $4, and I'm going to mark it up by dividing it by 0.6, and I'm going to sell it for $3.33, $5, $6.76. So you can make a new sheet, and we'll call this retail, and this cost, oops, sorry. That's, by the way, that's how you rename a tab, is you double click on the tab and then type, and it'll rename it, or you can rename, right click on the tab and select rename. So here's where my retail pricing is going to be. So I'm going to grab this, copy it, and I'm going to paste it where it needs to go with the paste special values, right? So you don't want to send this, because your customer does is all they got to do is look at this tab and they got it, right?
Right.
So there's two ways to do this. One way would be to save this, save as, and we're going to browse to some location on my computer where it would be the right place to put it. I'm going to call this my cost sheet. And then I'm going to take my cost sheet and I'm going to delete that tab. Now all that's left is my retail, and I say File, Save As, and I'm not going to call it cost, I'm going to call it retail.
Okay.
So now you've got two spreadsheets. One has complete information and one only has your retail.
Okay.
Does that help?
That helps a lot because I got to work on that this week. Thank you.
Okay. And earlier I told you that there's like 3 or 4 ways to do everything in Excel. There's another way you can do it. And I will show you that. Like if you wanted to, let me open this. I want to open that cost. So here I'm in my cost. And let's say I had an update, and now that's $5, and I grab this and I copy it, go to my retail tab, and I do my paste. So now I'm up to date, but my other spreadsheet's not up to date, is it? And I need to update it. Well, what you can do, right click on the retail tab, and you go to the move or copy. This is pretty advanced, by the way. And in the move or copy dialog box, to move the selected sheet to another workbook. I want to move it to my retail workbook. I have my retail workbook open on my computer. I have the class workbook open on my computer that we've been teaching from tonight. I have the cost one open. So all of the workbooks that I have open are available to me. I click on the retail one. I want to create a copy. I want to move it to the end of that workbook, and I say, okay. So now, I got to find it. Sorry. Got too many things open here. All right, so here's my retail, and now I've got two tabs. I've got a retail and a retail 2. So this was what was already in the workbook, and this is the tab that I just copied to this workbook. So I don't want to send this old one to my customer, so I can right-click, delete, delete, then take the number 2 out of my name, and I've got a fresh retail spreadsheet that I can send out to my customer.
That's slick.
And you can update hundreds of rows if you needed to, very quick. And if I went too fast over that, I'll be happy to work with you again on that another night. Let you try it and see if that works for you. And then next Thursday night, we can talk about it.
Okay, thanks.
Hal, it's 8 o'clock, but I'm not eager to rush off. If anybody's got any questions about things we did tonight.
Okay, we'll hold on a little bit and see if we get any more questions.
Oh, there's some, Mariah, would you be able to copy the formulas to somewhere else so that we know? Oh, that was what we just asked. Okay, gotcha, good. Mariah had asked that, okay.
Anyone else? Any questions? Well, if not, I appreciate all of you joining us, and thank you, Lamar, for this presentation tonight. We will look forward to seeing all of you next Thursday night at 6:30 Central Time. If you have some questions between now and then and you want to email those to me, I'll be glad to forward those to Lamar between now and next week.
Yeah, because we can work in answers to specific things that you're trying to, like Mariah had a price list type question tonight, and anything we'd like to fashion this workshop to include things that y'all are wanting to achieve.